Hello YouTubers, my name is Attila Mate from Blue Sky Photography, and today I would like to talk to you about something new on the camera market. Panasonic was very busy in the last few months, and I have to tell you they surprised me really well. Well, they just introduced, they announced, let's say, the Panasonic GH5 S, which was in one way it was expected, but I was surprised because they just announced the G9, so I thought that the GH5 S it will be maybe later this year or at the Photokina, in September. But they announced, and it will be introduced soon, on the market. So I would like to talk to you briefly about this camera because there are many videos on YouTube, and in my opinion there are some things which are not right, and I would like to clarify these things. Just these are my opinion, and I think that this opinion is pretty fair because I have a lot of experience with Panasonic cameras. So let's speak a little bit about the GH5 S. Now, first of all, let's clarify that this will not be a vlogger camera, and I tell you why. I will explain why. I saw a lot of videos where they were complaining about the GH5S because it's not like this, it's not like this, why it's not like this, why it's not like that. This camera is aimed for serious hardcore video shooters, and you will see in the next few minutes when I explain why I say this. So I will chimp down a little bit on my phone because I made a few notes, so I don't want to miss anything. Sorry about that. So let's take step by step. First of all, ergonomics. Same ergonomics like the GH5. Now, I had the GH5 in my hand and I tested it for several times, and it is some great handling, I tell you. Ergonomics and handling, the handling is like a small little DSLR, button placements, and everything. It looks like a small little DSLR. I love it because I'm a DSLR shooter. I shoot with DSLRs mostly. I also was a mirrorless shooter for a while, and I do have mirrorless cameras even now. But in the same time, I think that the DSLRs fits better in my hand, that's only me. So the ergonomics of the GH5 is simply extraordinarily good, I tell you. I don't think that anybody can complain about that. Now, the sensor, it's a new sensor in the GH5S. As we all know, the GH5 has a Micro Four Thirds sensor with 20.2 megapixels, or 20.3, I don't know, something like that. So basically 20 megapixels. This is a 10.2 megapixel sensor, which is basically half of the megapixel count of the GH5. Now, why they did that? Because if you want high ISO sensitivity and good ISO performance, then you must have bigger pixels. There is an example, look at the best ever low light camera on the market, the Sony A7S Mark II, which is again 12 megapixel or something like that, so it's from 24 megapixel they downsized to 10 megapixel or 12 megapixel because they have to increase the pixel size. Now over here we are talking about 1.96 times bigger pixels like in the GH5. So it will be like, well, I wouldn't say that twice as good as the GH5, but it will be really good in the low light. Now, obviously this has to be tested and all that, but in the same time, if I would be you, I wouldn't believe everything what you see on YouTube, because many times people will say, will talk a lot and say nothing, because they try the camera in certain way, that it's anyway, they favor some other companies. Let's clarify this. So I think that the GH5 was not really strong in low light, but that's understandable because it's a Micro Four Thirds sensor. But this camera, especially in video, it will be great because photography wise, it's a different story. So it's 10.2 megapixel. It's still enough for most of the times, but in photography, you have to realize that you cannot crop a lot. So I would say you can't really crop, you know, because okay, if you want to upload your photos just online for Instagram or Facebook or whatever, that's completely fine. But if you want to print your photos, and if you want to print like, I don't know, 18-inch by 12-inch or 23 by 18 or something like that, you have to realize that 10 megapixel will be kind of, I don't know, on the limit, you know. I wouldn't crop too much, you know. I printed 16 megapixel photos from my Pentax K5, which I printed, if I remember well, I printed in 23 by 18 or something, a big, huge print, you know, and it was great, it was excellent. But I never tried a 10 megapixel to print so big, you know. I printed smaller, but not as big. Anyway, I wouldn't suggest to crop a lot if you want to purchase this camera. But like I said, this camera is not for photography. It is designed and made for hardcore videography. Better ISO performance. Now people will say that it's roughly about 2 stops better than the GH5. I think that it will be a bit better than 2 stops. But anyway, that's what they say for the initial tests, you know. But like I said before, I wouldn't believe, until I don't put my hand on the camera, I wouldn't believe, because unfortunately you can't believe everything what you see on YouTube. Now, what is very important in this camera is that is the dual native ISO. Now, I don't want to get involved in this, you know, with the dual native ISO. What is that? You know, if you want, please search on YouTube and find out if you don't know what is that. It's about the sensor. The sensor has 2 circuits separate for 2 native ISOs. It's the camera, the ISO sensitivity of the camera will be much better because of this. And this camera has two types of dual native ISOs, which will increase a lot the ISO sensitivity and the ISO performance of the camera. Now, why I say that this camera is a hardcore video camera, because all of these settings, you know, all of these possibilities I was talking about before, they are in favor of video. Now, the example, the dual native ISO, it's very useful when you are shooting inside the example and then you just suddenly walk outside. It's very helpful. And as you will see in the future, I will talk about, you know, everything is kind of enhanced in video side, you know, not really for photo side. So it's this camera is designed and made for hardcore video shooters who wants really serious video camera. So, Cinema 4K enhanced. Now, we all know that Panasonic GH5 used to shoot in Cinema 4K. 24 frames per second, 422 10-bit in Cinema 4K. That's what Panasonic GH5 does, and this is excellent. It's a great video. I tell you, that's great quality, great video quality. Now, they enhanced this, and the GH5 S can do up to 60 frames a second in 4K. But that is 420 8-bit. Not 422 10-bit, 420 8-bit in 4K. Or it can do in 4K 30 frames a second, 422 10-bit. Now, in my opinion, 422 10-bit or 420 8-bit, you will see a difference, but you will have to look very much. It's not like a very transparent difference. I mean, you look at boom, you know, it's not like that. So most of the time you will not notice these kind of things. In some situations you will, but I tell you, 60 frames a second, that's really good, I tell you. Again, if we talk about 1080p, you know, that's a different story. I will speak in a minute about that, about the slow motion possibilities in this camera. But first of all, I want to speak about the IBIS. And this is something which many people complain a lot about this camera, that the in-body image stabilization was removed from the camera. We all know that Panasonic GH5 has 5 stops in-body image stabilization on the sensor. Now, why they removed it? Because obviously they wanted to be a hardcore video camera. And if you have in-body image stabilization, the sensor will move around to stabilize the photo when your hands are shaking. Now, if your sensor is moving, the heatsink from the sensor is not as good, and it's not really possible to make it as good as when the sensor is stable. You know, the sensor is just sitting over there, not moving at all. So this is their reason, I would say. This is Panasonic's reason why they removed the image stabilization. On the other hand, this camera is aimed for hardcore serious videographers, and they will usually use on a gimbal, or they will use on a tripod, or they will use on a monopod, so they don't really need image stabilization, in-body image stabilization. Or you can put some lenses on it which does have image stabilization, and then you have kind of two stops or whatever. But it's not the same, obviously. That's why I told at the beginning that this camera is not a vlogger camera. So if you want a vlogger camera, this is not for you, because it won't be really good to just put on a Joby Gorilla Pod and walk around, you know, with it. That will not be good, you know, that footage will not be really good. So, Vlog L installed on the camera. This is again something where a lot of people complained in the GH5 that the Vlog you had to purchase separately. It's true, including myself, I was complaining as well, because in my opinion that should have been included in the Panasonic GH5 because of the price point of the camera. Anyway, they decided to do that. In this camera it is included in the camera, the Vlog L. I think it's, in my opinion, it is great. It's good. So we arrived to the slow motion capabilities, and this is really good, I tell you. Now in 4K, 60 and 50 frames a second. Why I say 60 and 50? Because 60 frames a second in United States and 50 frames a second in Europe, because of the NTSC and PAL. Now in Europe we are different, we shoot with 50 frames, in US they shoot with 60 frames. That's the difference, you know, but basically that is double the frame rate, you know, like usually you shoot with 25 frames or 30 frames, and this is 60 frames or 50 frames, which is excellent in 4K. But let's go further a little bit and let's look at the full HD slow motion possibilities, and this is where this camera will blow you away. And in 1080p it's up to 240 frames continuously recording. Now that is unbelievable. You can record continuously with 240 frames a second. That's like you just want to shoot a video, you just record continuously with 240 frames, and then you can just slow down wherever you want. That's unbelievably good in my opinion. I don't really apply slow motion because my work it's not like that, but if you want to be creative and if you want to make a creative video, this is a big help and it's a good tool for you to do it. So that was oh sorry, I forgot to mention that in Full HD the Panasonic GH5 was able to record up to 180 frames a second, and GH5 S records until 240 frames a second, so it is enhanced again, like I mentioned before. Now again, it's something where a lot of people complain about this camera, and that is the autofocus, because the autofocus system is basically the GH5 system. Now I tell you something. Some people, I saw some videos on YouTube recently about the GH5 S, and some people, this Chinese guy, you know, he was bashing the GH5 that it's shitty autofocus and it's not good and it's blah blah blah. I tell you something, I was looking at the GH5 several times. I tested the GH5, I tested the autofocus of the GH5. I don't say that it's a Sony autofocus. We all know that in video, Sony and Canon, they are the best in autofocus. But whatever he mentioned over there in that video, that is BS. And I will explain and prove to you why. Because he was doing like that, he was doing the video and he said, oh, the Panasonic GH5's, the GH5 S has the same autofocus like the GH5, but I would not be so proud of that because look how shitty it is. And then he put his hand in the front of the camera, took it back, put his hand, took it back. Said, look, it's not focusing. Well, obviously, I tell you something, and I did try several times, I tell you. If you set your Panasonic camera on face detection and the eye recognition, and then you suddenly put your hand in the front of the camera and back, obviously there is a transition time. And that transition time will be longer because the camera is thinking, oh, I don't find the face now, so where it is, you know. And then it will be a transition time until the camera transits to the next focus point. Now that can be set to be slow or quick. And it depends how is your camera set. If your camera is set to the slowest transition time, that means that if you suddenly put your hand on it, it will take like 3 seconds until the camera gets to that focus point. And backward as well. Now what he did, if you watch his video, you will see that I'm right. He does like that, you know, he does like that. Come on, like guys. We are talking about video. This is not like autofocus in photography, you know, the it's not like that. We are talking about video. And if the camera, by any means, if the camera would focus that quickly, like he said, you know, like that, and if the camera would go suddenly to that point, and then they would complain, oh, the transition is shitty. Obviously. Now this is nonsense, I tell you. That test for video autofocus, I don't say that the Panasonic GH5's autofocus is the best in video, but I also say that that is really, really usable autofocus. It's very good autofocus actually. And let's not even talk about if there's a face in it. If there's the face, the camera will find the face and follow the face. I shoot all my videos with the Panasonic FZ2000. And like I said, I will post the screen up here. You will see in the screen that I did the test, you know, and the camera focuses very, very well on my hand. If I put my hand on it over there, you know, it will focus well. I take back, it finds my face immediately. If I put in the front of my face, you know, my hand, the camera focuses on my hand. If I take back, you know, it will find immediately, the square will appear and my face and my eye is found. Now you want to tell me that the Panasonic GH5 has worse autofocus than the FZ2000? Please, I don't believe that. Anyway, that's only me, that's only my opinion, but I think that that guy specifically favors Sony. It's true, Sony autofocus is better than Panasonic autofocus. Nobody is telling that, but it's not that bad, like he showed in that video. That's ridiculous. Anyway, if you want to do some tests, you can do whenever you want, you know, but like I said, it's about transition time. If you do like that, obviously the camera will not focus. There is a transition time in video. Okay, let's go further. In my opinion, the only and the single complaint I would have about this camera, the GH5 S, well, actually, two complaints, let's say. One complaint would be the price. Now that price is $2,500. It will be kind of 2,600 euro in Europe, because usually it is a little bit expensiver in Europe than in United States. You know? So it will be kind of 2,600 euro in Europe. Now I think that is a little bit too much. Now, obviously, if we look at Sony lineup, you know, the A7S and the A7S Mark II is expensive, you know. But in the same time, you can't compare, and this camera is not a competition to the A7S or the A7S Mark II, because that camera has better video autofocus. It's a full frame camera by any means, so it's different. And low light performance, this camera will be never near even to the A7S Mark II. So that's, I think that Panasonic didn't aim to compete with the Sony A7S, so nobody could compare these two cameras. They are completely different cameras. So that's why I think that this $2,500, it's a little bit high, because the A7S Mark II, it's about $3,000, 3,000 euro. I don't know exactly this time the price point, but I will check and I will put on the screen. But in my opinion, it's about $3,000, 3,100, something like that. Now, if I would like to buy a camera, a low light camera, and this is 2,500 and that is 3,100 or $3,000, so it's about $500 difference. I would seriously think about the Sony A7S Mark II, because that camera is a full frame camera, like I said, and that's a big difference. And that camera is really good. It's a king, it's a low light king. That's no discussion. End of discussion. So this is the first complaint. In my opinion, if the Panasonic GH5 is, let's say, $1,900 or €1,900 in Europe, this price point would be great if it would be 2,200 or even 2,100, you know. A little bit expensive, but like the GH5, but cheaper a little bit, you know. I tell you, a few $100s will make a difference. And people, many people, would look at that few $100s, especially if they want to get into a system. Anyway, I don't want to pull too long because this video it's too long anyway, even now. So I think, in my opinion, that oh, I forgot to say the second complaint. Yeah, the second complaint would be the in-body image stabilization removed. Yes, I know, I understand their point of view that this is a hardcore video camera. It's true, but still, you know, it would be very handy to have the in-body image stabilization. But anyway, like I said, this is not a vlogger camera. So I think, in my opinion, that if somebody wants a hardcore video camera, which for this price point, even for $2,500, you cannot get a video camera to produce the same image quality like the Panasonic GH5 S. But anyway, at the same low light performance. But that's the way it is, so we have to accept that. Now, when the camera will come on the market, obviously I will test the camera and I will have a look at it. But in my opinion, it will be a great camera. And if they would reduce the price with $200–300, you know, that camera would sell very, very much, I tell you, because it's great. So I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. I hope that you liked it. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and share my videos, and hit the little bell button near the subscribe button to get notified when I upload another video. And if you want to add something to this video, or if you don't agree with me, please leave a comment down below and we can discuss it in a professional manner. That's not an issue. Even if we don't agree with each other, you know, that's not a problem. I'm a human being and these are my opinions. You know, I can make mistakes. I agree with that. And we can discuss it anytime. You know, I accept other people's opinion. That's not an issue. So you can leave a comment down below and let's discuss it. And other than that, I wish you a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.